On this episode of ResiWeek, a design connection at CEDIA Expo, Google is continuing the conversation, and TP Vision and B&W make a TV. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is ResiWeek episode 125, Continued Conversations.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Crestron and by Daylight, the leading producer of high-quality projection screens worldwide.
Welcome to ResiWeek. This is your weekly wrap-up of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv. And today I'm pleased to be joined by Joe Whitaker. He is the president of The Thoughtful Home, The Thoughtful Restaurant, The Thoughtful Bake Shop, The Thoughtful Bait and Tackle Shop, The Thoughtful 7-Eleven.
Yes.
Have you started anything else recently?
Funny you say it. So we are looking at the Thoughtful Outdoors, which is technology for hunters, fishermen, outdoor sporting. That is on the list. So it's funny.
I've been sitting on that one for a couple of weeks, so I had to get it out there.
Nicely done.
Thank you. Tim, we also have Tim Albright. He is the founder of AVNation. How are you, sir?
I am well, sir. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I feel like I haven't talked to you in days.
Weeks, actually.
I know. It's been crazy. We've all been gallivanting around like crazy. All right, gentlemen, let's jump into our first story of the day. This comes to us from Residential Systems. CEDIA Expo has announced the debut of the Design Connection program. What this is a new platform that will unite technology integrators with design and construction professionals in order to create further collaborations and partnerships. What this means is in September in San Diego for CEDIA Expo 2018, you will have the opportunity to essentially go to a Design Connection Pavilion, which is an area of the show floor that is going to showcase some kitchen and bath brands that are using connected technology in their products. They're also going to host, the trade show is going to host some Design Connection tours that will allow you designers and integrators to go on a guided tour, seeing some specific products and manufacturers, and go around and network and look at some really cool things. Joe, let me start with you on this because you are an integrator and you work within, those design communities as well. When we look at this has been a big part of the strategic plan for CEDIA. Joe and I are both on the board. We know all about this strategic plan, but this is something that, integrators have been trying to do forever, is get themselves and their products in front of designers and construction professionals to assist, them understanding why we're needed, why we're a value partner for them. We've been looking at, not we as the board, but you and I as integrators, we've been looking at this kind of opportunity for a long time. Infocom's kind of gone down this road with their show, or Avixa has with the Infocom show, where they're inviting more end users. CEDIA has been doing this at the Expo for the last couple of years, but this is the first time it's really kind of culminated in this type of application. How big of a deal is it that we're finally seeing, an actual program in place for designers to come to an Expo and see some of this technology?
Well, it's huge, but one of the things to kind of understand is, you've seen some things and some questions out there when this was announced. This has been a little while coming, where CEDIA has already, participated in the Kitchen and Bath Week, the National Association of Home Builders stuff. Dennis and I were at HD Expo for hospitality design in Vegas. This has kind of been a buildup within a very good strategic partnership between CEDIA and Emerald Expositions. That has been kind of big in that a buildup for the first time ever to bring architects, designers, and some mass media. Don't think that you might not see Better Homes and Gardens is one of the media representation inside those tour groups.
Yeah.
And then also the Kitchen and Bath, the Pavilion is a good turnaround of CEDIA having its pavilion at their event, because we are starting to see the importance of that crossover and the understanding happening. These things actually working together and talking together. We now all realize that we need to work together, but to be able to do that, it has to be presented in a way that is consumable. The tour, I'm not going to try to drop too much information on that, because some of it has to be a surprise. But there will be 2 tour guides. You might or might not be looking at one of them. And the tour has a very specific theme component to it, where you have, the larger builders or architects and designers and some of the mass publication people given a tour on the trade show floor through the eyes of an integrator. Why, this brand could fit, and why architects may need to keep their eye on motorized and ceiling mounts from Nexus 21, or shades from Shade Innovation by Screen Innovations, or these other products that are handpicked and selected that have implications for both the integrator and for the designer and architect. Mm-hmm. So that these thoughts can start way early on inside the actual design portion of a project, which is something, Matt, you and I know we want that. We need that. And it could be a much better end result if that happened all the time. So that's kind of the thing, is start getting these minds moving so that we can do that.
Very good. Tim, the question I wanted to pose to you on this was, you don't really know the Resi AV space the way that Joe and myself do. You come to it from a press standpoint. You've never really worked in it that extensively. So you have a different take on this. But the big thing that I'm curious about is, how much change do you expect to see on the show floor with this, opening up to interior designers and builders and, some of the national press that may or may not have been there in the past? We saw this at InfoComm 18 this year, where end users were everywhere. And there was some pushback. Do you expect to, you like the way I just kind of danced around that one? Do you expect to see some of that at CEDIA Expo?
Pushback from the new attendees. I think it depends on the qualifications and the qualified leads that manufacturers get. Now, let's be clear about what manufacturers are looking for. They're looking for qualified leads. They're not looking for just bodies. Mm-hmm. And regardless of whether it's InfoComm or it's ISE or CEDIA or CES, CES is a bad example, but yes, it's pretty much anybody with a pulse can get in there. But as long as these are qualified leads, I was actually talking with a couple of manufacturers who happen to exhibit at both InfoComm and CEDIA. And I asked them that question. I said, what do you expect this year? And a lot of them don't know. They really don't know what to expect. A lot of them are positive. They're very, very optimistic about Emerald, the new owner of the CEDIA show, Emerald, bringing new blood and new attendees to the show. Question, though, that each of them has is the qualifications, these qualified leads. Now, this can be a homeowner could absolutely be a qualified lead, because this is somebody who can walk around the show floor at CEDIA in San Diego and go, oh yeah, this looks interesting. Oh, I never knew that this existed. Talking with their integrator and walking alongside them, or maybe getting ideas without having an integrator tied to them. It can also be a qualified lead, can be an architect like Joe talked about, really kind of understanding and wrapping their head around what a connected home should look like and can look like, and the possibilities that are out there that may or may not have ever been exposed to. But the bottom line for the manufacturers who are exhibiting this year, because this is the first year that Emerald has the show, is going to be the quality of the leads that they have. And honestly, from what I'm being told, is this year will dictate the future participation for a number of these manufacturers, because if they're not qualified leads, if they're simply just bodies walking through and picking up the free swag that people have, then they may not be back the next year. But if they are honest to goodness, good qualified leads that these manufacturers can go back to and start building relationships with folks that they may not have been exposed to before, it'll be a no-brainer to sign up for 2019.
Well, I want to add to that just real quick. So the tour and the things that come along with that in the pavilion are very specific to that. So in that, kind of expect, and I've talked to a lot of the manufacturers that are going to be involved with this, expectation set. You're from that area, you're only going to see about 50 more people. Your admittance, the people who usually come, your badge wearers, right now, that is not going to change too much. The reason for the architects and those guys coming in is to increase the knowledge with those guys so that they can work better with their integrators, and maybe at the same time be turned on to some products that they can go back to their integrators and say, you haven't offered this to me before, I would like this in my projects, or that kind of thing. This year, you're not really going to see that many different people, homeowners, or even, track builders, or the connected tour is a couple of small groups, very specific. So overall, I think the expectations the manufacturers have, they're still going to see the same people, the same qualified leads, the same kind of interactions. The only thing they're going to have to be careful for is start looking at badges, because there's some people you're going to want to talk about MSRPs, and there's some people you're going to want to talk about dealer costs. This year will be the test for that.
But let me ask you this, because I don't know if it was Joe, you, or Matt, but one of you mentioned the magazine Better Homes and Gardens, right?
Mm-hmm.
That press outfit, that magazine, first of all, is a legacy magazine. It's been around for a long time.
Oh yeah. But
those readers are not home builders. Those readers, by and large, their audience are homeowners. And if they start covering this, you don't see a case where a homeowner will go, oh, I'm building a new vacation home, or I'm building a new home in my hometown. This looks like an interesting trade show, and I've never been to San Diego or Dallas or Denver. This sounds like something interesting that sounds like something I would be interested in going to.
That's already something that you will see, though, on the show floor. Is there will be end users, not a ton, but there will be end users that show up with their integrator or occasionally with their designer. Yeah. And they'll walk around. I met, I can't remember his name, one of the IndyCar drivers in the Lutron booth.
Perfect.
Yes, because he was building a new home. They were filming it, and he was walking around and seeing what technology he wanted to put into his home. And that's not we don't see it to the extent that we see it at Infocom, but you do see it.
So the one thing I'll say about that is we actually had this discussion on AV Week last week. The definition of an end user at CEDIA, I think from my perspective, is vastly different than the definition.
Very much so. Very much so.
When you look at like Tim just said, Better Homes and Gardens, and those, the trickle down is not to get end users, homeowners, to become attendees. When the articles come out and all that stuff runs, you'll hear about CEDIA Expo and a tour, but you'll see specifics with brand recognition as far as manufacturer brand and CEDIA. And the concept is, within those kind of publications, is to direct those end users and home owners to CEDIA certified professionals to get brand X, Y, and Z installed.
Okay.
That is kind of the thought of the end game. That's why I think what Emerald is doing with this is nothing short of brilliance.
Yeah, this is going to be very interesting to watch. All right, gentlemen, let's move on to our next story. This comes to us from CE Pro. Google launches Continued Conversations, which does nothing but remind me of Conversation Street. It is a new feature for Google Home devices, and one of our friends from the UK, who never will watch this show, would have gotten a kick out of that joke, as Tim kind of did. The big thing with this is going to allow you to have, for lack of a better term, a conversation with your Google Assistant. It'll leave the microphone open for an additional 8 seconds after it answers a question if you have a follow-up. So when you ask a question like, how old is Barack Obama? and Google responds with Barack is 56 years old, you can then follow up with how tall is he? And in theory, it will respond with an answer to that. You don't have to rephrase that question. So when we start looking at this from a home automation control standpoint, the biggest thing will be something to the effect of, okay, Google, turn off the living room and the kitchen lights. And in theory, Google will turn them off, opposed to saying, okay, Google, turn off the living room lights and turn off the kitchen lights. This is expected to be a big thing. Right now, it's only open or available in the US. Tim, I want to start with you on this. This does seem like a really big feature to be adding in, a little bit more of that natural language understanding for Google. But when we look at this, I want you to answer two things for me. One, does this give Google a significant advantage currently over Alexa? Because Alexa does not yet have this. And two, what does this mean for products like Josh AI, which are currently the big natural language product within our channel? If Google is able to do this and do this well, it's a lot cheaper to buy a Google Mini than it is to buy even the Josh Micro, like significantly cheaper. If this does 90% of the same thing, what's it mean?
All right. So to answer your first question first, yes, it gives Google an incredible advantage. Doesn't mean that the Amazon and Siri can't come along. I'm using those two because those are the two main competitors. I'm leaving Cortana out mainly because there's not really a whole lot of home automation systems that are using it. There are a couple, but it gives Google an incredible advantage over Alexa and over Siri. And honestly, it comes out of, from my perspective, it comes out of another thing that Google announced, and that is their virtual assistant. Mm-hmm. And if you've not watched that, just Google it. I apologize, but Google, you
couldn't say just Bing it.
I know.
Just Bing it.
I did not say that. It is not my nature to say. But that was one of the most phenomenal natural language computers I've ever witnessed in my life, where a computer is calling up a hair salon, I think, and mm-hmm. made an appointment for Joe Whitaker to get his haircut. And the interaction was very natural. It was very, very eerie, actually, as someone who grew up in the 80s and the 90s watching Skynet and Blade Runner, to see this in action. This is an extension of that, and it's the back end of Google. The second part is, yes, it's an incredible problem for Josh AI, because it is less expensive, and because Google has, I'm going to argue that Google has a far more, at least in number, engineers working on this problem than Josh AI does, mm-hmm. Which gives them the advantage in the long run. Maybe not the short run, but the long run, it gives them an advantage over Josh AI.
Joe, when you look at this, the concern I have is this something that is going to instantly work with all those home automation product skills that are out there? Or is this something where we're going to have to maybe not redevelop our skills, but have those skills be refined to take advantage of this natural conversation?
Well, it's funny. It's Tim just brought up the thing about making an appointment, a hair appointment, like the video. And if I'm not mistaken, us three talked about this for ResiWeek. So we've had this discussion before. Now they've just one-upped it. So, I'm looking at. I've started to step away from looking at the brands that are doing what, because if you kind of take all the brands and stick them together, you're starting to see a natural progression in voice. They both release their own thing. Then just not too long ago, Amazon with Alexa allowed you to do follow-up questions without having to use the wake word again. So mm-hmm. What's your next transgression? Now your next move is to not only not have to say the wake-up word, but now not have to also do an off or on command, to be able to say turn on this and this or that, to be able to add the if thens, buts, ors into it. So I'm seeing it just as a natural a movement into something bigger, and they're just taking turns. So I'm willing to bet Alexa's next announcement, which I don't know, it'll probably happen before CEDIA. They'll come up with something. They'll have their big announcement plus it'll do what Google's doing right now. And then right around CEDIA, Google's going to announce something that does what Amazon just announced, plus something else. So I'm now stepping away from the brand analytics of it and looking at a technology growth pattern that they're all contributing together. They're all moving the needle forward, and they're taking that. Well, this brand's going to beat that brand. This is not freaking VHS and Betamax. Voice is going to be voice, and they're going to continually engineer and grow together. But on to what, Matt, your question was, is shortly after Amazon did that last update, Control 4 did release a new skill or an updated skill that allows you to speak much more naturally to the control system to be able to do exactly that. Turn on the kitchen lights and this. Or just go, Alexa, set my TV to ESPN.
Yeah.
Instant channel jumps through a control system, not having to use dishes, skill, or anything else. So we're already starting to see that. Did my company have to change any programming? Not so much. We actually went in and deleted some heavy macros that we had built to do some of this stuff, and then we just go click and discover, and boom, it's done. So, I mean, I'm no longer worried about the technology. Now I'm actually starting to get really excited because these brands are, instead of fighting, they're just kind of started following suit and engineering in a path, which you don't see a lot. Well, other than 4K. You saw it with 4K.
Yep. Yeah.
But I mean, that's what I think the big deal is.
Very good. All right, gentlemen, let's go to our likely last story of the day. This comes to us from strategy.com. TP Vision and B&W partner on a new Philips TV. This is specifically to Europe. But TP Vision is the principal licensor of the Philips brand for upscale TVs in Europe, and they've partnered with B&W to create some new TVs that will have B&W sound within them. Joe, I wanted to start with you on this one. Here in North America, as a rule, Philips is not the brand you think of when you think of upscale luxury TVs. I can't think of the last time I really honestly saw a Philips TV other than the one that had the weird backlighting built into it. Ambilight, yes, that quasi worked most of the time, somewhat.
2004 or 5, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. So that's 12, 13, 14 years ago.
Uh-huh.
When we look at this story, B&W is well known for ultra high-end, great sound, great products, great looking products. To me, this is a very weird mix. Where would this have come from?
Jeez, I know you got me. I'm joking. It's almost who's trying to save who conversation. Being that they're only releasing, initially in the EMEA UK over there market is interesting to me. Other than it's a really good test market with critical mass. That plays into it well. And this is a very good spin on. Martin Logan being in cars, Harman Kardon getting into Fiats. We know that this kind of model works. And what's our biggest complaint? Speakers and TVs sound like crap. Sony toyed with the ferrite fluid type of speakers and other things. So, I mean, we know that putting a good speaker in a TV can kind of reevaluate and rebrand something. One of the things that I thought was hilarious, is when you brought up that old Sharp TV, and then I look at Ted's article, and I see an updated version of an Ambilight TV. I was like, "Oh, they're bringing this back! I loved this." But that wasn't the core. That wasn't the core of the article.
No.
So taking a good quality, good brand speaker and using it to reinvigorate a brand that used to be trusted inside the custom market. Because I will tell you personally, I have not sold in a custom market a Philips TV since the Ambilight. I actually have a picture on our Facebook somewhere of one from 2004 or 5. But it is a very good strategic business move to follow good branding and audio to reinvent a video category. We've seen this work before, in other markets. Maybe it could help both, but for it, obviously for it to be adopted in our market, they're going to have to follow some other people's suits, two-way RS-232 drivers or Ethernet control or better smart functionality for us to embrace that. But for the consumer, especially in Europe, putting B&W in there is really not a bad idea.
Tim, when I look at this, again, I'm still trying to wrap my head around why this happens and who's going to buy this thing. And I got to ask, is B&W enough of a draw, do you think, for the average European consumer who you and I we've been over to Amsterdam quite a few times. I've traveled through Germany and the UK, and consumerism isn't the same there. You don't see homes with, 5 60-inch TVs or apartments with 5 60-inch TVs. You see 132 or 124 in the corner. Is the B&W partnership going to be enough to make someone say, ooh, I really want to go buy that Philips TV?
Well, first of all, let's talk about the B&W brand. And I think that you hit on the head, and so did Joe. It's high-end audio, right? It's a high-end audio brand. And I think that partnering from Philips' side and TP's side, it was very smart for them to get B&W on board. But Joe hit on something very important as far as developing a product. The European market, you're right. People don't buy 5 or 6 TVs in their home, by and large, as far as consumerism goes. But they buy one good one. And, audio is very important as much as video is. And we have all been subjected to really, really cruddy flat panel speakers. That's why the sound bar market, came to be. So they've got a nice, compact product or a market to test this in. And if they can convince folks who, again, only purchase 1 or 2 TVs primarily in their residence, based on the quality of the audio and the name of Philips, the quality name of Philips, then they've got something. And then from there, they can develop and kind of expand out and go from, EMEA to North America, where we do buy, 4 or 5, 6 TVs, but we typically have one good one in our home. Not to say that we all go out and buy cruddy ones for the rest of the house, but we have one main place, one main spot in the house. But that's our main TV, right? Mm-hmm. That's the majority of Americans. And so if we as Americans could say, okay, this is our main TV, and we also tend to invest in the audio in at least that one main TV, and B&W again has a cachet about it, has a high quality name about it, then I think they've got something there. Now what they have to deliver on is they have to deliver on both. They have to deliver on the audio, regardless of whether it's the B&W name. That has to sound incredible. It has to match what people expect when they talk about Bowers and B&W. Yeah. But the TV has to be on par with what folks are able to pick up on Amazon or on Best Buy.
Now, keep in mind, for them to expand into the U.S. or North America, they'll have to ink a partnership with the other licensee of the Philips brand in North America. All right, gentlemen.
Well, the other thing that, one of the important things to consider is, Tim touched on a bunch of them, but we also have to consider construction in Europe. So in Europe, in-ceiling speakers, there's a lot of reasons why getting audio, why Sonos is so popular over there, is getting good sounding audio around a house in the UK, especially retrofit, is a very hard task. I mean, it's difficult. And to be able to take some good B&W speakers, stick them in a TV where they don't have to do a sound bar or do anything crazy or add on components, it's got a big upsell there too in the UK, just based on the way construction is done there.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting thing to watch. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Joe, if people want to connect with you and see what you're doing, where can they do that?
They can always find me on social media at Thoughtful Home or at The Thoughtful Home. At either. Always find me at CEDIA. I'll be at Expo this year. So any of you guys out there watching, see me, come up, say hi, hang out. And you can always find me here on ResiWeek every once in a while. So
yeah, every now and again, we fit you in. Tim, thanks so much for joining us again. If people want to connect with you, where can they do that?
Probably the best place is on Twitter, at TD, Tim David Albright on Twitters.
Excellent. Thanks again. For myself, if you'd like to connect with me, you can find me at Matt D. Scott on Twitter and every other social platform. But more importantly, please stop by AVNation.tv. You'll find this show, as well as a wide variety of our other shows with all the verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our underwriters. We are extremely thankful for their support and ask that you support them as well. Thanks again for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of ResiWeek.